Chapter 9 of Proverbs presents us with a crucial choice: to follow the path of wisdom or the path of folly. Solomon, in a poetic and profound way, places us before two invitations, each one coming from a personified figure: wisdom and folly. Both invitations seem attractive at first glance, but their destinations are radically different. Wisdom leads to life, while folly leads to destruction. Solomon invites us to reflect on the power of our choices. From the beginning of Proverbs, he has emphasized that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and that living a wise life is a path of blessings and prosperity. Now he calls us to consider the impact of these decisions on our daily lives. How do we react to the teachings of wisdom? Are we willing to listen and follow its advice? Or are we inclined to choose the path of folly, which promises immediate pleasure, but hides devastating consequences? This chapter presents us with a clear choice. Who are we going to listen to? Wisdom, which offers a feast filled with blessings and understanding, or folly, which offers fleeting pleasures, but which lead to spiritual death? Both invitations are extended to all of us, but the choice of which path to follow is individual. The central theme of this chapter is about the consequences of these choices. Solomon uses the image of a banquet, a feast prepared by two very different hostesses. Wisdom has prepared her house, her pillars are strong, and her banquet is made of foods that bring life. On the other hand, folly, noisy and full of falsehood, also invites people to a banquet, but her ways are deceptive and dangerous. This contrast makes us realize that not every invitation we receive is good. Not every choice that seems pleasant at the moment will bring us lasting satisfaction. It's easy to be seduced by the immediate pleasures offered by foolishness, but the cost of following this path is very high. On the other hand, wisdom requires patience and discernment, but the rewards it offers are profound and eternal. In this chapter, Solomon wants us to understand that wisdom is always calling us. It has already been presented in previous chapters as a figure who cries out in the streets, in plain sight of everyone, offering discernment and understanding. Now it invites us to its house, to a feast that symbolizes the fullness of life and the blessings it provides. The invitation of wisdom is for everyone, not just for the wise, but especially for the simple, for those who are still in search of understanding. On the other hand, folly also extends its invitation. It is described as noisy, beckoning the unsuspecting to a path that seems pleasurable, but leads to destruction. Folly offers quick and easy pleasures, but its promises are empty and deceptive. What it does not reveal is that its feast leads to death, both spiritual and emotional. At this point, we are invited to reflect. Who are we listening to? Are we accepting wisdom's invitation, which calls us to a life of justice, truth, and understanding? Or are we being seduced by the promises of foolishness, which seem pleasant at the moment, but hide dangerous consequences? Solomon wants us to understand that our choices have consequences, and these consequences can determine the course of our entire life. The invitation of wisdom is before us every day. Will we choose to listen to its voice, follow its path, and partake in its feast, or will we be seduced by the quick pleasures of folly? The choice is ours, but Solomon reminds us that wisdom brings life, while folly brings destruction. In verses 1 and 2 of chapter 9, Solomon describes wisdom as a hostess who is preparing a feast for her guests. He writes, "Wisdom has already built her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her animals, mixed her wine, and prepared her table." Solomon begins by showing us that wisdom is not impulsive or disorganized. It has built its house. This house, with its 7 pillars, is a symbol of strength, stability, and perfection. In the Bible, The number 7 often represents perfection or completeness, suggesting that wisdom offers a solid and reliable foundation for our lives. This image also shows us that wisdom is firmly established and ready to welcome those who accept its invitation. The house of wisdom is not temporary or unstable. It has been carefully built to last. This reflects how wisdom offers us a secure and stable path of life, unlike the uncertainties and dangers that accompany folly. Solomon wants us to see that following wisdom is like dwelling in a strong and secure house, where we can find protection, guidance, and peace. Just as wisdom has firmly built its house, those who follow it also construct their lives on a solid foundation that withstands life's storms. In addition to building her house, wisdom has prepared a feast. She sacrificed her animals, mixed her wine, and set her table. This image of the feast is rich in symbolism. The act of sacrificing animals indicates that wisdom offers something valuable, something that requires effort and preparation. The mixed wine suggests that wisdom provides deep pleasure and satisfaction. Offering more than just the basics, it brings in spiritual abundance and wealth to those who accept her invitation. The preparation of a banquet also shows us that wisdom wishes for everyone to be well nourished. It does not only offer us knowledge, but it nourishes us with teachings that are essential for our spiritual and moral life. When we accept wisdom's invitation, we are invited to partake in a feast of growth, understanding, and discernment, which strengthens and equips us to face life's challenges. The table of wisdom is full of everything we need. In mixing the wine and preparing the sacrifices, wisdom is telling us that those who follow her will be fully satisfied. The life she offers is not one of scarcity, but of abundance of understanding, of righteousness, and of peace. The feast of wisdom is a celebration that fills the soul, gives us discernment, and brings us closer to divine principles. This description of the banquet invites us to reflect. Are we seeking the banquet of wisdom in our lives? Are we accepting the invitation to partake in this table filled with understanding and truth? Or are we settling for the superficial and fleeting things the world offers? Solomon wants us to understand that wisdom does not offer us crumbs. It invites us to a full banquet, where our soul can be fully satisfied. The image of the 7 pillars of the house of wisdom also teaches us that wisdom provides a complete and perfect foundation for our lives. Just as a house needs a strong structure to stand, our lives need to be grounded in wisdom. When we build our lives on these principles, we are secure, protected, and ready to face any storm that may arise. Upon accepting wisdom's invitation, we are invited to enter this strong and secure house, to partake in a feast that brings complete satisfaction and understanding. Wisdom has already prepared everything we need. It is up to us to decide whether we will accept the invitation and nourish ourselves with everything it has to offer. In verses 3 to 6, Solomon describes how wisdom extends its invitation to everyone. He writes, "She has already sent her maidservants to cry out from the heights of the city. Who is simple, let him turn in here. To those lacking understanding, she says, Come, eat my bread, and drink the wine I have mixed. Forsake foolishness, and live. Walk in the way of understanding." Here we see wisdom sending out her maidens to spread her invitation. This shows us that wisdom does not passively wait for people to find her. She actively seeks out those who need her. The maidens are sent to the heights of the city, symbolizing that wisdom's invitation is made publicly, so that everyone can hear and have the opportunity to respond. The invitation of wisdom is clear. Whoever is naive, turn to this. Wisdom does not discriminate. it especially invites the naive and lacking understanding, that is, those who do not yet possess discernment or wisdom. Solomon wants us to understand that nobody is beyond the reach of wisdom. Even those who consider themselves inexperienced or foolish are welcome to partake in the feast of wisdom and learn its ways. Wisdom is generous and inclusive, offering everyone the chance to learn, grow, and change their lives. This approach to wisdom teaches us that seeking wisdom is an accessible choice. No matter where we are on our journey, we can all start seeking wisdom, acknowledging that we need guidance and discernment. The invitation of wisdom is especially directed to those who recognize their limitations and are willing to learn and grow. Wisdom invites us to eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. This invitation reminds us of the image of the banquet, where wisdom offers spiritual and moral nourishment to those who accept her invitation. Eating the bread and drinking the wine of wisdom symbolizes internalizing her teachings, allowing them to transform us from within. Wisdom is not just a collection of advice. It feeds and strengthens us spiritually, giving us the clarity and understanding needed to live a righteous and fulfilling life. Next, wisdom makes a direct appeal to us. Forsake foolishness and live. This is one of the most powerful statements in the chapter. Wisdom not only offers us food and drink, it calls us to leave foolishness behind and choose life. Solomon wants us to understand that wisdom and foolishness cannot coexist. To follow the path of wisdom, we need to abandon the foolish behaviors and thoughts that drive us away from righteousness. This is a call to transformation, a radical change of direction, where we set aside ignorance and folly and choose to live according to the principles of wisdom. The invitation to walk the path of understanding teaches us that following wisdom is a continuous journey. It is not a single decision, but a daily commitment to live according to its teachings. Wisdom invites us to walk its paths, which means that we must be actively engaged in seeking discernment and applying its principles in our lives. When we choose to follow this path, we are choosing a life that is guided by truth, justice, and understanding. At this point, we are called to reflect. Are we accepting wisdom's invitation to leave foolishness behind and follow its ways? Are we feeding on the bread and wine of wisdom, allowing its teachings to transform us and guide us towards a fulfilling life? Solomon wants us to understand that wisdom has already prepared everything we need. The feast is ready, and the invitation has been made. Now it is up to us to choose whether we will leave foolishness behind and live according to the ways of understanding. Wisdom is actively calling us to partake in its feast, to abandon foolishness and walk in its ways. It's an invitation to a transformed life, full of discernment, peace, and justice. The decision to follow wisdom is the decision to truly live. In verses 7 to 9, Solomon talks to us about the importance of how we react to correction and how it reveals our level of wisdom or folly. He writes, "Whoever corrects a mocker invites insults on themselves, and whoever rebukes the wicked incurs dishonor. Do not rebuke a mocker, or they will hate you. Rebuke a wise person, and they will love you. Instruct the wise, and they will be wiser still. Teach the righteous, and they will add to their learning." This excerpt teaches us that our attitude towards correction and teaching is a clear indicator of wisdom or folly. Solomon begins by warning against trying to correct the scoffer, a person who despises instruction and rebels against any form of correction. He tells us that whoever rebukes a scoffer incurs insult upon themselves. This suggests that foolish and arrogant people are not willing to learn or change. They not only ignore advice, but also react with hostility and contempt when someone tries to instruct them. The mocker represents those who are stubborn and proud, who refuse to acknowledge their mistakes and resist wisdom. Solomon teaches us that correcting such a person can be a futile effort, as their arrogance prevents them from accepting the truth. They take offense and turn against those who try to help them. This shows us that humility is essential for learning. And those who reject wisdom are, in fact, rejecting the opportunity to grow and change. In contrast, Solomon shows us the attitude of the wise and towards correction. He says, "Rebuke a wise man, and he will love you." This is a striking characteristic of the true wise man. He not only accepts correction, but also values it. The wise man understands that correction is an opportunity to grow, learn, and become a better person. Instead of reacting with offense or hostility, he responds with gratitude and love for those who correct him. This teaching reminds us that wisdom is a continuous process of learning. Nobody is born wise. Wisdom is acquired over time, especially through correction and advice. The wise person does not fear being corrected, because they know that each learning opportunity takes them to a higher level of understanding and discernment. Solomon continues, saying, "Give instruction to a wise man, and he will become wiser. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase in understanding." This reinforces the idea that wisdom is progressive. The wise man is never satisfied with what he already knows. He is always in pursuit of more knowledge, more discernment, more growth. The righteous man, when taught, increases his understanding because he has the humility to recognize that there is always more to learn. This is an attitude of humility and openness that characterizes those who follow the path of wisdom. This passage also challenges us to reflect on our own willingness to accept correction. How do we react when we are corrected? Are we like the mocker, who rejects instruction and responds with pride and arrogance? Or are we like the wise, who accept correction with humility and use it as an opportunity to grow? Solomon wants us to understand that wisdom is built on the foundation of humility. The ability to accept correction and grow from it is one of the clearest marks of a wise person. This passage teaches us that the way we react to advice or reprimand is a clear measure of where we are on our journey of wisdom. If we reject correction, we remain stagnant and bound to folly. But if we accept correction with humility, we become wiser, grow in understanding, and move closer to the full life that wisdom offers. At this point, we are called to reflect. How are we reacting to correction and teaching? Are we open to learning and growing, or are we resisting and rejecting the advice of others? Solomon teaches us that accepting correction with humility is an essential step on the path of wisdom. If we want to live a righteous and prosperous life, we must be willing to listen and learn from those who correct us, knowing that this will lead us to a deeper understanding and a more fulfilling life. Wisdom calls us to be humble, to acknowledge that we always have something to learn, and that correction is an opportunity to become better people. The wise person accepts this truth and grows with it, while the fool rejects it, remaining in their error and foolishness. In verses 10 to 12, Solomon returns to a central theme that permeates the entire book of Proverbs: the fear of the Lord. He writes, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For through me your days will be many, and years will be added to your life. If you are wise for yourself, and if you scoff, you alone will bear it." Here Solomon reaffirms the fundamental basis upon which all wisdom is built: the fear of the Lord. The fear here does not mean fear in the common sense, but rather deep reverence and respect for the power, justice, and holiness of God. The fear of the Lord puts us in a position of humility, acknowledging that we are limited in our understanding and that we must seek divine wisdom to guide our lives. This verse reminds us that all true wisdom begins with our correct relationship with God. Recognizing who God is and His role in our lives is the starting point for all understanding. Human wisdom, no matter how sophisticated, is limited and flawed if it is not grounded in the knowledge of God. Solomon is showing us that without this spiritual foundation, any other form of wisdom becomes incomplete and superficial. Solomon also emphasizes that the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. This means that true understanding comes from the knowledge of God and His attributes. The more we know God, His justice, love, holiness, and truth, the more discernment we gain about life, about what is right and what is wrong. This knowledge is not merely theoretical, but it is transformative. It changes the way we live and the decisions we make daily. This principle of the fear of the Lord as the foundation of wisdom is crucial because it reminds us that for our source of discernment and clarity should be in God. Often, in the search for answers, we might turn to philosophies, trends, or our own opinions. However, Solomon makes it clear that true wisdom begins when we place God at the center of our lives and allow His principles to guide our thoughts and actions. In the following verses, Solomon describes the rewards of wisdom. He says, "Through me your days will be many, and years will be added to your life." Here, he reminds us that following the path of wisdom not only provides us with understanding, but also leads us to a longer and more prosperous life. Wisdom guides us away from destructive choices, avoiding dangers that could shorten our life or bring negative consequences. By following wisdom, our decisions lead us to paths of safety, peace, and longevity. Solomon also mentions that, "If you are wise for yourself." This teaches us that wisdom directly benefits the one who seeks it. When we follow the path of wisdom, the rewards are ours, a fuller, fairer, and more meaningful life. Wisdom enables us to live in a way that our choices result in personal blessings, both in spiritual and practical terms. On the other hand, he warns us that, "If you are a mocker, you alone will suffer." Those who choose foolishness and reject wisdom will have to deal with the consequences of their own choices. This is a powerful reminder that the path we choose determines our destiny. Those who reject correction, knowledge, and the fear of the Lord will end up bearing the weight of their wrong decisions. Solomon wants us to understand that the choice of wisdom or folly does not only affect those around us, but has a direct impact on our own lives. If we choose wisdom, we reap the fruits of life, longevity, and prosperity. If we choose folly, we face the consequences of our stubbornness and rebellion. Wisdom brings life, folly brings suffering. At this point, we are called to reflect. Are we building our lives on the foundation of the fear of the Lord? Are we seeking the knowledge of God as the basis for all understanding and discernment we need? Solomon reminds us that true wisdom begins with reverence for God, and that following this path leads us to a life of blessings, longevity, and fulfillment. Solomon's invitation is clear. By following wisdom and living in reverence to God, we ensure that our days are multiplied, that our choices lead us to peace, and that we can enjoy a prosperous and secure life. However, if we ignore this truth and reject wisdom, the consequences will be borne by us, at a cost we cannot foresee. In verses 13 to 15, Solomon presents us with the personification of folly, offering an invitation that seems similar to that of wisdom, but is deeply deceptive. He writes, "The foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knows nothing. She sits at the door of her house, on a seat by the highest places of the city, to call those who pass by who go straight on their way." Here we see foolishness, described as a restless and noisy figure. It is referred to as mad and foolish, which means that it is impulsive, reckless, and devoid of discernment. Unlike wisdom, which builds its house with firmness and stability, foolishness is chaotic and disorganized. It lacks true knowledge, and therefore its paths are filled with deceit and destruction. Solomon shows us that folly also makes a public invitation. Just like wisdom, it sits at the door of her house and calls those who pass by. This suggests that folly is active in its attempt to attract and deceive people. It does not passively wait for people to come to it. On the contrary, it actively seeks those who are walking straight, that is, those who have not yet fallen into its deception. This description is a powerful warning that the path of folly may seem attractive at first. Folly places itself at the city's heights, suggesting that it is visible and accessible to all. Often, the paths of folly are disguised as something attractive or exciting, and this can easily deceive those who lack discernment. Just like wisdom, folly publicly calls out, but its promises are empty and deceptive. The main fundamental difference between wisdom and folly lies in their invitations. While wisdom offers a well-built house and a feast that nourishes and strengthens, folly is noisy, restless, and without substance. It offers nothing of real value. Instead, its promise is of quick and temporary pleasures, which ultimately bring destruction. Solomon wants us to understand that foolishness appeals to our most immediate desires. It doesn't offer growth or discernment, but takes advantage of those who are seeking easy solutions or quick pleasures. By positioning itself at the door of your house, foolishness is trying to capture those who are inattentive or unprepared, luring them into a path that seems pleasant at first, but hides dangerous traps. This image of folly reminds us that not everything that seems good or attractive at the moment is truly beneficial to our lives. Folly often appears disguised, offering what seems to be a quick fix or a shortcut to happiness. But what it really offers are empty promises. Unlike wisdom, which leads to life, folly leads to destruction. At this point, Solomon challenges us to reflect on how we are responding to the invitations we receive in life. Are we accepting the invitation of wisdom, which leads us to a life of discernment, stability, and peace? Or are we being seduced by the noisy appeals of folly, promising immediate satisfaction, but bringing pain and destruction in the long term? Folly may be attractive at first, but its consequences are devastating. The description of Solomon teaches us that the path of folly is always a path of deceit. It may seem inviting, easy, and effortless, but what it really offers is a false promise of happiness. Folly does not bring peace or prosperity. It only leads to confusion and loss. Just like the invitation of wisdom, the invitation of folly is made publicly, and we all are confronted with these two paths at different times in our lives. The decision of which path to follow is ours, but Solomon warns us that the path of folly never leads to a good destination. On the contrary, it is a path that brings suffering and regret. At this point, we are called to reflect. Are we listening to the noise of folly and being seduced by its deceptive invitations? Or are we choosing wisdom, which offers a path of discernment, growth, and true satisfaction? Solomon teaches us that folly is full of empty promises, and those who follow it find only destruction and loss. In verses 16 to 18, Solomon continues describing the deceptive invitation of folly and what it truly offers to its followers. He writes, "And says to those who pass by the street, who go straight on their way, stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But they do not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of hell." Here we see how folly seduces its victims with promises of forbidden pleasures. It calls out to those who are following their path correctly, that is, those who are still walking righteously, but who can be easily swayed. Folly is not content with luring only those who have already fallen into error. It seeks to seduce the righteous as well, offering something that seems exciting and different. She says, "Stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant." This is a powerful metaphor for the forbidden pleasures calm that folly offers. The stolen waters and the bread eaten in secret symbolize what is obtained in an illicit or immoral way. Folly appeals to the human desire to experience something that is, by its nature, forbidden or secret. The idea that something stolen or hidden is sweeter or more pleasant is a dangerous trap that folly uses to lure the unsuspecting. Solomon shows us that the appeal of folly is based on the temptation to break rules and seek pleasures outside the boundaries established by God. The idea that stolen waters are sweeter reflects the illusion that sin, although forbidden, offers greater satisfaction than following the straight path. This reminds us that often sin appears attractive, precisely because it is forbidden, but this attraction is superficial and deceptive. The problem is that, as Solomon warns us, those who accept this invitation do not know what lies behind it. He says, "But they do not realize that the dead are there, that her guests are deep in the realm of the dead." This is a serious warning about the final destination of those who follow the path of folly. The feast that seems sweet and pleasant at first glance is, in fact, a deadly trap. Those who accept the invitation of folly are, in fact, participating in a party that leads to destruction and spiritual death. Folly promises pleasure, but it hides the destructive consequences of its promises. Solomon warns us that those who follow the path of folly are unknowingly stepping onto a path that leads to death. The fate of those who accept folly's invitation is ruin, not just physical, but spiritual. They are in the depths of hell, symbolizing separation from God and complete destruction. This passage teaches us that the choices we make, especially those based on the desire for immediate and forbidden pleasures, can have far deeper consequences than we imagine. Foolishness makes its promises in a tempting way, but what it offers is empty and destructive. The momentary pleasure it promises soon turns into pain and loss. At this point, Solomon challenges us to recognize the deceptions of folly and resist its temptations. He wants us to understand that, although sin may seem sweet at first, its end is bitter and full of destruction. What folly offers is superficial and temporary, but its consequences are lasting and profound. This description of the feast of folly is a clear warning that not everything that seems good is truly beneficial. Folly promises something pleasant, but what it delivers is pain and death. Those who accept its invitation are walking towards ruin without realizing it. Solomon wants us to be vigilant. Foolishness not only deceives those who are already in error, but also seeks to divert those who are on the right path. Therefore, we need to be alert to its traps, resisting the temptation to seek the forbidden pleasures it offers. At this point, we are called to reflect. Are we accepting the invitations of folly into our lives, even if subtly? Are we being seduced by promises of quick and easy pleasures without considering the long-term consequences? Solomon teaches us that following the path of folly is like walking towards death, while the path of wisdom leads to life and prosperity. Folly may seem appealing at first, but its end is always tragic. Choosing wisdom is to resist the temptation of immediate pleasures and seek a path of full life and true satisfaction. As we conclude chapter 9 of Proverbs, Solomon leaves us with a central message. The choice between wisdom and foolishness defines our destiny. This chapter is a powerful metaphor about the two invitations we all receive throughout life. Wisdom and foolishness call us to their feasts, but the outcomes of accepting one invitation or the other are radically different. Wisdom provides a path of life, understanding, and enduring blessings. It prepares a solid house, filled with stability, and invites everyone, especially the simple, to partake in a feast that nourishes and transforms. Following wisdom leads us to a fulfilling life, where we find peace, discernment, and true prosperity. Solomon shows us that wisdom protects us from life's dangers, guides us towards decisions that bring lasting benefits, and keeps us on the path of righteousness. On the other hand, foolishness, with its seductive invitation, offers only temporary and destructive pleasures. It promises quick satisfaction, but hides the fact that its followers are heading for ruin. Foolishness appeals to immediate desires, offering an illusion of pleasure, but the price to be paid is high. Those who accept its invitation are unknowingly treading a path that leads to spiritual and emotional death. Throughout this chapter, Solomon invites us to reflect on the consequences of our choices. He reminds us that our decisions have a direct impact on our future, and that following wisdom or folly is not a trivial matter. The feast of wisdom is a path to life, but the feast of folly is a path to death. These two invitations are always present, and we need to be aware of their differences. Solomon also teaches us that wisdom is accessible to all. No matter where we are on our life journey, wisdom is ready to welcome and guide us. The invitation of wisdom is for the simple, for those who are still seeking understanding, and it is always ready to provide the true spiritual and emotional nourishment we need. Wisdom gives us the strength and discernment needed to resist the deceptions of foolishness and keeps us steadfast on a path of righteousness. This chapter challenges us to make a conscious decision about how we are going to live. Will we follow the invitation of wisdom, which leads us to life, or will we allow ourselves to be seduced by the empty promises of folly? This choice, as Solomon showed us, is one of the most important ones we can make in our lives. An important lesson from this chapter is that not every path that seems pleasant is good for us. Foolishness may appear attractive, offering immediate pleasures, but these pleasures come with destructive consequences. The appeal of foolishness is strong because it promises what seems easier or sweeter at the moment, but the end of this path is filled with pain and loss. Solomon warns us not to be deceived by this superficial glitter. In contrast, the path of wisdom, it may require patience, self-control, and discernment, but its rewards are profound and enduring. Wisdom offers a fulfilling life, a solid foundation upon which we can build our future, and the promise of blessings that accompany us throughout our entire journey. Those who choose wisdom find not only success and prosperity, but also an inner peace that cannot be bought. With the temporary pleasures that foolishness offers. At this point, we are called to reflect deeply on our daily choices. Are we following the path of wisdom, which leads us to a life of stability and growth, or are we succumbing to the appeal of folly, seeking immediate pleasures without considering the long-term consequences? Solomon wants us to understand that the path of folly is deceptive, and that only wisdom can lead us to the life that God desires for us. This chapter is a powerful warning about the importance of living with discernment. The invitation of wisdom is always present, but it requires humility and reverence to follow it. The fear of the Lord, as we have seen, is the beginning of wisdom. When we put God at the center of our lives, we find the path to true prosperity and peace. Finally, Solomon leaves us with a clear choice: to follow wisdom or folly. This is a decision we make every day, and each choice we make brings us closer to one of these two paths. May we choose wisely, hearing the cry of wisdom, accepting its invitation, and living a life that reflects God's eternal principles.